Bible Land, Walking Where Jesus Walked, narrated by Dr. Bill Humble. Part 5, The Jerusalem Jesus Knew.
Jerusalem. With 1,800 references to this city in the Bible, Jerusalem is far more important than any other place mentioned in Scripture. The city is more than 4,500 years old. It's worn many names across the ages: Salem, Jerusalem, the city of David, the city of the great king, the holy city. And Jerusalem is a holy city built on Mount Moriah, as Eliashib of Bethlehem reminds us.
Now, Moriah means the chosen place, and that's where the three great religions meet. It's a holy place for the Jew, for the Christians, for the Muslims. And that's why one of the Psalms of David, it says, when there is peace in Jerusalem, there is peace all over the world.
Jerusalem is about 35 miles from the Mediterranean Sea and about 15 miles from the Jordan River. It's in the hill country of Judea, 2,500 feet above sea level. Jerusalem is a divided city. It's divided between Jews and Arabs, and it's divided between the old and the new, the ancient and the modern. The modern Israeli city of Jerusalem has a population of 500,000. It has tall buildings that dot the skyline and offend those that want to keep Jerusalem looking like an old city. It has the Israel Museum, the Shrine of the Book where the Dead Sea Scrolls are on display, and the Knesset where the Israeli parliament meets. Jerusalem was a walled city in Jesus' day, and there is still an old walled city of Jerusalem dominated by the Dome of the Rock. But the present walls are not the ancient walls that were standing in Jesus' day. The city has been destroyed and rebuilt again and again. The present walls were built by Suleiman the Magnificent 450 years ago when the Turks ruled the Bible land. The walls are now a park, and we can walk around the old city on the walls. The narrow opening in the wall is a grim reminder of how often armies have fought for control of Jerusalem. But while much of the present wall goes back to the 16th century, there are many places where the ancient walls are still standing. For example, at the southeast corner of the Temple Mountain there's a seam in the wall. You can see it above the two trees. We know from the Jewish historian Josephus that Herod the Great added a little over 100 feet to the wall here to extend it to the south. That means that the wall on the right of the seam was already there 2,000 years ago. It may go back to Ezra and Nehemiah, maybe even to Solomon.
Well, we are looking now to the city of the great king. The Gold Dome Mosque, this is the site of the Temple of Solomon, or the site of Mount Moriah, which it is connected with our great father Abraham. That's where he brought Isaac to sacrifice. Now, the corner of the wall, that's the pinnacle of the temple. And as we know, the good Lord had three temptations. Two took place down Jericho, one took place up here, when the devil brought him up to the holy city and told him, if you are the Son of God, jump down and let the angels receive you.
There are 8 gates leading into the old walled city of Jerusalem. The largest and busiest of these gates is the Damascus Gate that we see here. It leads from Jerusalem to Damascus, 230 miles to the north. When Paul left Jerusalem to go to Damascus to persecute the Christians, Paul would have left from this gate. The present gate is 450 years old. But just a few years ago, archaeologists were working below the present level, and they found just below the present gate, the Roman gate, that is nearly 2,000 years old. The Jaffa Gate is on the west side of the city. This is the citadel of the Tower of David. In Jesus' time, Herod the Great had 3 towers here to protect his palace. Part of one of those towers is still standing. The Golden Gate is in the eastern wall facing the Mount of Olives. The gate that we see was built in the 16th century, but the ancient gate lies buried below it. This was the gate that Jesus came through on his triumphal entry into the city. This historic gate has worn 3 names, as Elias explains.
But if we go back to Matthew 21:1, Jesus rode the donkey from Bethphage, and he went into the city through the eastern gate. That was the name. In Acts 3, John and Peter healed a man on a gate called Beautiful, the same gate. And the third name now is Golden Gate. The name were given after the money changers. That's where the money changers used to be seated, exchanging the Roman coin to a Jewish coin, and that's how the name were given, Golden Gate.
The area within the old walled city is less than 1 square mile, but it's bustling with busy people. The present streets are not the ones Jesus walked on. The city has been destroyed and rebuilt several times, so the streets of Jesus' day lie buried several feet below the present streets. But the sights and sounds and smells of old Jerusalem haven't changed very much in 2,000 years. The bustle of people, animals carrying their loads through the streets, animal manure littering the streets. The sounds of merchants and shoppers haggling over prices. The invitation of the shopkeeper. Come in and I'll make a special price just for you. No, the sounds haven't changed very much since Jesus walked these streets. Somewhere in this old city on ancient streets, Jesus ministered to the masses. He taught the people. He was tried and condemned, and he carried his cross along a way of sorrows to Calvary. As we view Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives across the Kidron Valley, the Dome of the Rock dominates the old city, and beyond there are the tall buildings of the new Israeli city. But what did Jerusalem look like in Jesus' day? Wouldn't it be a moving experience if we could see the city as he saw it? Thankfully, we can. Archaeologists and historians have built a scale model of Jerusalem. The scale is 1/50th of the real size, so the model is 1/3 as long as a football field. The temple stood on Mount Moriah, where the Dome of the Rock stands now. On the opposite side of the city, the west, Herod the Great had built an enormous palace. It had bedrooms and banquet halls for hundreds of guests. At the north end of the palace, there were 3 towers to guard it. The tallest, nearly 150 feet high, was named for Herod's brother, Phasael. Part of this tower is still standing in the citadel. The smallest tower, on the right, was named for Mariamne, Herod's favorite wife. He loved her dearly, but when she was accused of adultery, he had her put to death, and then almost went mad because of what he had done. When Herod began rebuilding the second temple, he built a great retaining wall around Mount Moriah to give a larger area for building on the Temple Mount. On the south, this great wall was 200 feet high. The Hulda gates were in this south wall. At the northwest corner of the Temple Mountain, Herod built a large fortress to protect the temple. There was a large open court around the temple, the court of the Gentiles. Gentiles could come into this court, but no further, on pain of death. A balustrade separated the court of the Gentiles from the first inner court, the court of the women, and beyond, there was the court of the men. The temple was Herod's masterpiece. It was as tall as a 15-story building. It was made of white marble with columns of reddish marble on the front. It was decorated with gold around the top. Josephus says that the temple looked like a snowy mountain glittering in the sunshine. Below the temple, there was a hippodrome or stadium. It was used for chariot races like the one in Ben-Hur. South of the stadium, there were palaces and the synagogue of the freedmen, where Stephen preached and became the first martyr. The pool of Siloam, where Jesus healed the blind man in John 9, was near the synagogue. There was a large fortress at the northwest corner of the Temple Mountain. Herod named this fortress Antonio in honor of Mark Antony. The towers were 100 feet tall. Near the fortress, there was the pool of Bethesda, where Jesus healed the lame man. The Jerusalem that Jesus knew came to an end in 70 AD. It was destroyed by the Romans. Part of the wall around Mount Moriah survived, but not one stone of the temple itself was left standing. But many sites from Jesus' day can still be identified. The pinnacle of the temple and the south wall of the Temple Mountain are still there. Archaeologists have done extensive work here in recent years. The Pool of Bethesda has been excavated. This is where Jesus healed the man who had been a cripple for 38 years. Lilies of the field are growing on the side of the pool. Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. The Pool of Siloam is still there, and water still flows through the Hezekiah Tunnel into the pool. There are many monuments in the Kedron Valley that were here in Jesus' day. This one is Absalom's Pillar, a monument to Absalom, the son of David. It's more than 2,000 years old, and as Jesus walked up and down this Kedron Valley, he would have passed this monument many times. The largest section of Herod's wall around the Temple Mountain that is still standing is on the west. This is the Western Wall, sometimes called the Wailing Wall. This wall is a holy place to Jews. It was captured by the Israeli army in the 6 Days War in 1967, and now it's a place of prayer for all Jews. Old men come here for prayers. Young men come. Soldiers come. Judge Stephen Adler, who serves on the National Labor Court in Israel, explains why the wall is so important to Jews.
The Western Wall, which you see in back of me, is the remnant of the wall around the temple compound at the time of the Second Temple. This is one of the last parts, the last remaining parts of the Holy Temple, which we have in existence. And to the Jews, the temple was the center of their religious life, where they prayed and where they came for holidays and where they came from all over the world, even at the time of the Second Temple, to pray and to make a pilgrimage. So for Jews today, this is the catalyzation of their religious life and the center of the religious life in Israel.
On special days like Jerusalem Day or Pentecost, tens of thousands of people converge on the wall. They come before dawn, and they come from everywhere, including the black Jews from Ethiopia. There is a crush of humanity along the wall. The prayers, singing, chanting continue for many hours as people come and go. Judge Adler explains how Jews celebrate Pentecost.
The Jews celebrate Pentecost in Israel by staying up all night and studying the Bible until the early hours of the morning, when they can say the morning prayers, at which time from all over the city they come in groups with the Torah, with the Bible, to the wall and congregate at the wall as a flow of people, sort of a pilgrimage to the wall, and they then say the morning prayers at the wall.
Nearly all the men at the wall are wearing prayer shawls and phylacteries. Judge Adler explains why.
A Jew prays every day 3 times a day. For the morning prayer, he puts on the phylacteries and a talit, a prayer shawl. The prayer shawl is because of the fringes, which it says in the Bible you should have fringes to remember God all the time. So one set of 4 fringes we wear underneath the shirt, and one we put on, especially in the morning for the prayer. In addition, we have the phylacteries, which is one for the head and one for the arm. And this is also from a prayer in the Bible, which says that you should keep the Word of God between your eyes or on your forehead and around and near your heart. And so this is sort of facing the heart. And inside these boxes are the parts of the Bible written on parchment by hand.
There are no women at this part of the Western Wall. They're not allowed. But the women have their own section of the wall, and they come for prayer and for singing and dancing. Because of the destruction and rebuilding, we know that the street level of Jesus' day was lower than the street level now. But how much lower? Archaeologists have sunk a shaft here at the Western Wall, and they have found 14 levels of Herodian stone below the present street level. And these stones look new, like they were just put in place. Next time, as we continue our tour of Jerusalem, we'll see Mount Moriah, the Dome of the Rock, and the Garden Tomb.